Ridiculous. Anyway, it's always been and it still is. And so these aristocratic and royal families moved on. Eventually, when the people started to rebel against overt royal control dictatorship, these families, some of them stayed in the royal families overtly, and there's still some around, like ours. But these families moved into politics, into banking, into business, and became the dark suit, but they still perceive themselves as royalty, as special, because of this genetic connection to the serpent gods. And through the British Empire, the so-called Great British Empire, and the other European empires, as these bloodlines moved up into Europe from the Middle East, etc., they exported these bloodlines all over the world. And we saw them in power in what we call colonization. But there's two types of control. One has a finite life, one can go on forever until it's exposed. The one that has a finite life is a dictatorship that the people under dictatorship can see, touch, and taste. Communism, fascism, apartheid. People know where they stand, and eventually, therefore, they will rebel against it because they know what they're dealing with. The greatest form of control is a control you can't see. Prison without the bars. You can't see the bars because you'll just sit there. People do not rebel against not being free when they think they are. And that's the idea of replacing the colony control with another kind of control called freedom. So what happened is, as these colonies, like the United States as it became, etc., and all the others around the world, as they were given independence, what was left out in those countries were the bloodline, under different names, the secret society network that manipulates the bloodline agenda, and those countries have gone on being controlled ever since. But because they have the ability to have a vote every 4 or 5 years, they don't realize they live in a tyranny. And that's how it works, the prison without the bars, and until it's exposed, it'll go on forever. And so these kind of people, especially the Rothschilds, they are major, major players in this. They are the middlemen for the manipulation of this reality from these entities mostly outside of this reality. And what they've created is like a global transnational corporation. What you have with a corporation is you have a headquarters somewhere in the world, and then in each country you have subsidiary companies of that headquarters, that central point. And all the subsidiaries in the world carry out the policy of the central point. Well, what these Illuminati hybrid family networks have done is create exactly the same, but instead of companies, they are secret society networks. So you've got the center of the web in Europe, for historical reasons, at operational level anyway, places like London, not the British government, the secret society center in London. In Rome is another one, the Roman Church, Rome, and other points in Europe. And then in each country, you have families from the network in those countries whose job it is to run the networks that control that country's business, banking, politics, media, all of it. And so what you have is, from this central point in Europe, the center of the web, all these different places and countries all over the world then impose on their country what is being dictated here. And that's why, as I travel around the world, I see the same things being introduced in different countries at the same time, overwhelmingly justified by the same excuses. It's all a global network. It can be symbolized too as a web, like I say, with the Rothschilds real close to the spider, and all these different strands on the web are different secret societies, different semi-secret societies, transnational corporations, and all the rest of it. So when you see all these different names of these corporations that dominate the world in so many ways, and the pharmaceutical cartel, and the oil cartel, and all the rest of it, the biotech cartel, they're all different names or different masks on the same one face. And so you have this structure where outside of visible light you have the reptilian control system, comes down through the Illuminati families, and they control the people in power to push the world in a certain direction. Another way of looking at it here. You see, all these different people, these fight among themselves and all the rest of it, though if it gets out of hand, they get sorted. So these sit on the top of all these different countries. They control these different areas of their societies, and the people are then played off against each other. These buggers don't go to war, they tell these buggers to go to war. And if we stop going to bloody war, game over. But we do. Ridiculous. That's part of becoming conscious. So these people are just pawns in a game, in a way, genetic pawns in a game. They're just kind of shells to play out this agenda with invisible light. I mean, some batches are better than others, of course. So if you look at the principle of the Trojan horse, the symbol of the Trojan horse, coming into a society and not seeming to be what it is, though taking it over, and you put that on the face, well, you've pretty much got symbolically what we're talking about here. People send me pictures from around the world and stuff that they find on the internet and elsewhere, which have a kind of reptilian feel about them. I'm not saying these are reptilian eyes, it could be a trick of the light, but I've used it because it gives an indication of the number of people that have told me this all around the world, from all walks of life, how they've seen people shift from a human to a reptilian state, and especially the eyes are the first to go. They describe how the pupils become reptilian. And interestingly, a great friend of mine has an associate who, I don't agree with it, but he's been doing a research project to develop iris scan technology, and it led to him looking very deeply into 2,300 eyes. And he said he knew nothing about what I'm saying, probably never heard of me. And he said to my friend, the amazing thing was that about 4% appeared to be of reptilian type and appearance. And that is a recurring number, in my research anyway. 4-5% seem to be of this hybrid nature. So these people are reptilian hybrid human reptilians. And you look at the eyes, but behind the eyes are something else. I had an experience with this guy, Ted Heath. He was Prime Minister of Britain from 1970 to 74, took us into the European Union as it became. And it's a long story, I've told it before, but he looked at me in a dressing room in a television station, and as he looked at me, this is what his eyes did. His eyes went completely black, everything. And as I looked into his eyes, it must have been like that for, I don't know, maybe a minute, 2 minutes. And as I looked into his eyes, I said at the time, it was like looking into two black holes, because you couldn't make eye contact because there was no contact. And it was like, as I know now, looking through him into this other dimension where he was really controlled from. This man, Ted Heath, oof, my goodness me. My goodness me. The children that guy has tortured and killed. And I've been saying this since 1998 in print, and he was alive for many, 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 many years after that. And nothing happened. Why? Because it's true. And so these people are like hiding behind human form. And I rest my case. I rest my case.